Hello everyone. So let's talk about some of the environmental health hazards in this video. So environmental health is a field that assesses environmental factors that can influence our health and quality of life. Environmental health is a branch of public health. So this includes both natural and anthropogenic, which means human-caused factors. And there are four types, and each one has its risks. Some are avoidable, some are not. So let's talk about those. First one we have are the physical hazards that arise from natural environment processes. For example, UV light, UV radiation from the sunlight can damage DNA in the cells, and it has been linked to skin cancer, cataracts, and immune suppression. So we can reduce these risks by shielding our skin from intense sunlight with clothing and sunscreen. So like I said, some of these are avoidable, some are not. And then the chemical hazards, these are synthetic chemicals that humans manufacture, disinfectants, pesticides. So those are under pharmaceuticals, those are under chemical hazards. Biological hazards, these result from ecological interactions among organisms that cause to harm people, such as viruses, bacteria, insects, or parasites, so the ones that can cause disease. Infectious diseases are the illnesses that can spread from person to person. So when we get sick from a virus or bacterial infection or other pathogens, we're suffering from parasitism. And some of these infectious diseases spread with vectors. So vectors in organisms such as mosquito, so that would be an example, that can transfer the disease to the host. So then we have the last one, which is the cultural hazards. These occur as a result of our place of residence or socioeconomic status, occupation, and behavior choices. So it's kind of think of all these as a lifestyle hazard. So we can minimize or prevent some of these cultural hazards where others may be out of our control. For example, people can choose whether or not to smoke cigarettes, but exposure to secondhand smoke in the home or workplace may not be in our control. So same might be said for the diet, nutrition, or drug use. So some we can control, others we can't. All right, so toxology is the study or science of examining effects of poisonous substances on humans and other organisms. Toxicity is the degree of harm caused by the chemical substance called toxicant. And any chemical has the potential to be toxicant. Might depend on the dose, at what dose it becomes toxic, and the level of exposure. Environmental toxicology is the study of human-caused, again, this word means human-caused chemicals released into the environment that have human health effects. So this deals specifically with toxic substances that come from that or discharged into the environment. So infectious and non-infectious diseases cause majority of the deaths worldwide. So six types of diseases count for 80% of deaths from infectious diseases. So infectious diseases are number two cause of human death. And these are the six that are kind of on top. However, non-infectious diseases can cause death as well. So these develop without any action of foreign organism. And these develop as a result of genetic and environmental factors and lifestyle choices. You don't catch non-infectious diseases. People develop them through a combination of their genetics and other factors. So, for example, whether a person develops lung cancer depends not only on his or her genes, but also on environmental conditions, such as if the person is exposed to any airborne chemicals, or if they decide to smoke or not smoke. So these can be, so the incidence, which is, how much of a disease is there, it can change based on lifestyle choices. And smoking has decreased as a cause of non-infectious disease in the United States, but obesity has not. So obesity is typically due to low levels of physical activity coupled with diet high in calorie and fat. But other factors can be involved. Um, so um, there are some, diseases and deaths due to non-infectious diseases. Also, there was a study that found that exposing pregnant mice to high levels of BPA, so that's bifist chemical that's found in plastics, you know. So this increases the production of fat cells in a pregnant mice developing embryo. So this causes mice that were prenatally exposed to BPA to store more fat cells as adults, even though um, um, they might have similar diets, but if they are containing something that has BPA, something in plastic containers, that can change that. All right, so cigarette smoke and radon are leading indoor health hazards and top two causes of lung cancer. So we spend most of our time, Americans spend most of their time living indoors, but the spaces inside the homes and workplaces can also have environmental hazards. So these are some things that what radon is a radioactive gas that seeps up from certain types of bedrock and is colorless and undetectable without specialized kits. It's highly, highly toxic. Um, and then exposure to mold, asbestos is something that can live in walls of the home where moisture levels are high, or mold can live there. So asbestos is used in as an insulation in the walls and in other products, and it's dangerous when the fibers get inhaled. So long-term exposure to asbestos can scar the lung tissue, and it can cause a respiratory disorder called asbestoitis. And another one that's been talked about is lead. It's a heavy metal and it can cause lead poisoning, which is very dangerous, and it can cause damage to the brain, liver, kidney, stomach, and it can also cause behavior problems in children, and can cause anemia. It can cause so many health issues. And today, lead poisoning can result from drinking water that pass through lead pipes that are common in old homes from ingesting or inhaling lead-containing dust produced by, um, lead paint. Um, I don't know if you know about Flint, Michigan. That's a city in Michigan. Um, so what happened was there they decided to do a cost-cutting measure. Flint, they stopped purchasing its drinking water from the city of Detroit and switched the water supply to Flint River. And almost immediately after the switch, people began noticing that water looked and smelled and tasted really odd. And then children developed rashes, and there were strange illnesses that started to emerge across the city. But state regulators concluded that the city was the water's safe to drink, even though the tests did show that there was 1,000 times higher lead present than what EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, allows. And this kind of continued for a year and a half. And researchers estimated that 40% of the Flint homes were experiencing elevated lead levels in their tap water. And uh, pediatricians, they said, oh, there's the amount of lead in children's blood was doubled. So eventually, Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality concluded that lead contamination was widespread in Flint, and it was resulting from water not being treated properly. So they switched the water supply back to Detroit, and the city also got 200 million in upgrade to drinking water. So this is a picture, people holding their tap water from their home, examining a patient in children's center, and this is a worker replacing the lead water supply. So they did get some money to do the replacement for the pipes um, and get the water from Detroit. Another one is the PBDEs. These are compounds that are used as retardants in a variety of products, including electronics, plastics, and furniture. So they evaporate over time at very slow rate throughout the lifetime of a product, just like bisphenol A, which is a BPA. So these are also act as hormone disruptors. They interfere with their thyroid hormones. And um, thyroid hormone interruption is really, it's very, it's almost seen in, every other person. It's happening a lot. So they did a study where they tested blood and urine of Americans, and they found one type of PBDE was present in every person in the study. That kind of shows how widespread exposure is to these in modern America. So European Union, they banned it in 2003, but they have not addressed it in the United States. These can cause a lot of issues. So the chemicals, they play, a role in increasing our standard of living. For example, we can use chemicals to clean water, but their use carries a potential human health risk. So they try to weigh the benefits and risks of each chemical to determine whether it should be widely used or not.